That did it. I was across the table in a second. Sax's chair tumbled over backwards. I landed heavily on top of him. He grunted in pain. I pressed my body down hard on his. My arms and legs were shaking. I held back from actually throwing a punch. He was absolutely powerless to stop me, I realized. He didn't know how to fight back. He wasn't very strong or athletic. Nick Ruskin and Davy Sykes were inside the interrogation room in a flash, and Kyle and Sampson were right behind them. They jammed into the room and tried to pull me off Sachs. Actually, I pulled myself away from Wick Sachs. I didn't hurt him, never intended to. I whispered to Sampson, "He isn't physically strong. Casanova is. He isn't the monster. He isn't Casanova." Chapter 99. That night, Sampson and I had dinner together at a pretty good spot in Durham. Ironically, it was called Nana's. Neither of us was especially hungry. The overly large steaks with shallots and mountains of garlic mashed potatoes went to waste. It was late in the game with Casanova, and we seemed to be falling all the way back to square one. We talked about Kate. I'd been told by hospital officials that her condition was still poor. If she lived, the doctors believed that she had little chance of full recovery, of ever being a doctor again. "You two were more than, good friends?" Sampson finally asked. He was gentle with his probing, the way he can be when he wants to. I shook my head. "No, we were friends, John. I could talk to her about anything, and in ways I'd mostly forgotten. I've never been so comfortable with a woman so quickly, except maybe for Maria." Sampson nodded a lot and mostly listened to me air it all out. He knew who I was, past and present. My beeper sounded while we were still pushing around the generous portions of food on our plates. I called Kyle Craig from a phone downstairs in the restaurant. I reached him in his car. He was on his way to Hope Valley. "We're about to arrest Wick Sachs for the Casanova murders," he said. I almost dropped the receiver. "You're about to what?" I shouted into the phone. I couldn't believe what I had just heard. "When the hell is this going to happen?" I asked. "When was the decision made? Who made it?" Kyle kept his cool as always. The Iceman. "We're going into the house in the next couple of minutes. This time it's the Durham police chief's game. Something was found in the house. Physical evidence. It will be a joint arrest, the Bureau in cooperation with the Durham PD. I wanted you to know, Alex." "He's not Casanova," I said to Kyle. "Don't take him down. Don't arrest Wick Sachs." The level of my voice was high. The payphone was in a narrow corridor of the restaurant, and people were filing in and out of nearby restrooms. I was drawing stares, both angry and fearful looks. "It's a done deal," Kyle said. "I'm sorry about it myself." Then he hung up the car phone on me. End of discussion. Sampson and I rushed to Sachs's house in the Durham suburbs. Man Mountain was quiet at first. Then he asked the $64,000 question. "Could they have enough to convict, without you knowing anything?" It was a tough question for me. His meaning, how out of the loop was I? "I don't think Kyle has enough for an arrest now. He would have told me. The Durham PD? I don't know what the hell they're up to. Ruskin and Sykes have been off doing their own thing. We've been in their position ourselves." When we arrived in Hope Valley, I found out that we weren't the only ones who had been called to the arrest scene. The quiet suburban street was blocked off. Several TV station trucks and minivans were already there. Police cruisers and FBI sedans were parked everywhere. "This is really fucked up. Looks like a block party," Sampson said as we got out of the car. "Worst I've seen, I think. Worst screw-up." "It has been from the beginning," I agreed. "A multi-jurisdictional nightmare." I was shaking like a wino in winter on a D.C. street. I had taken one body blow after another. Nothing completely made sense to me anymore. How out of the loop was I? Kyle Craig saw me coming. He walked up to me and firmly grabbed my arm. I had the feeling he was ready to body block me if necessary. "I know how damn upset you are, so am I," were his first words. He seemed apologetic, but Kyle also appeared angry as hell. "This wasn't our doing, Alex. Durham blindsided us this time. The chief of police made the decision himself. There's political pressure right up to the State House on this thing. Something smells so bad I want to put a handkerchief over my nose and mouth. What the hell did they find in the house? I asked Kyle. What physical evidence? Not the dirty books. Kyle shook his head. Women's underwear. He had a large cache of clothes hidden in the house. There was a University of North Carolina t-shirt that belonged to Kate McTiernan. Casanova apparently kept souvenirs too, just like the gentleman in L.A. He wouldn't do that. He's different from the gentleman, I said to Kyle. He has the girls and plenty of their clothes at his hideaway. He's careful and obsessive about it. Kyle, this is fucking crazy. This isn't the answer. This is a huge mess-up. You don't know that for sure, Kyle said. Good theories aren't going to stop this from happening. How about good logic and a little common sense? That won't work either, I'm afraid. We started to walk toward the back porch of the Sachs house. TV cameras whirred in action, shooting anything that moved. It was a full-scale three-ring media circus, a disaster of the highest order in progress. They searched the house sometime late this afternoon, Kyle told me as we walked. Brought dogs in, special dogs from Georgia. Why the hell would they do that? Why suddenly search the Sachs house now? God damn it! They received a tip, and they had reason to believe it. That's what I'm getting from them. I'm on the outside too, Alex. I don't like it any more than you do. I could barely see 2 feet ahead of me. My vision was tunneled. Stress will do that. Anger, too. I wanted to shout, to scream out at somebody. I wanted to punch out lights on the Sachs' veranda-style porch. Did they tell you anything about this anonymous tipster? Jesus Christ, Kyle. God damn it to hell, an anonymous tip? Oh, God damn it. Wicks Sachs was being held hostage inside his own beautiful house. The Durham police apparently wanted this historic moment recorded on local and national TV. This was it for them. North Carolina law enforcement Hall of Fame time. They had the wrong man, and they wanted to show him off to the world. Chapter 100. I recognized the Durham chief of police right away. He was in his early 40s and looked like an ex-pro quarterback. Chief Robbie Hatfield was around 6'2", square-jawed, powerfully built. I had a wild, paranoid thought that maybe he was Casanova. He looked the part anyway. He even fit the psych profile of Casanova. Detectives Sykes and Ruskin were flanking the prisoner, Dr. Wicks Sachs. I recognized a couple of other Durham detectives. They all appeared nervous as hell, but jubilant and mostly relieved. Sachs looked as if he'd taken a shower in his clothes. He looked guilty. Are you Casanova? Are you the beast after all? If so, what the hell are you pulling now? I wanted to ask Sachs 100 questions, but couldn't. Nick Ruskin and Davy Sykes joked around some with their brother officers in the crowded foyer. The 2 detectives reminded me of a few professional jocks I'd known around D.C. Most of them liked the spotlight. Some of them lived for it. Most of the Durham police force seemed to operate like that, too. Ruskin's hair was shiny and slicked back, combed back tight against his skull. He was ready for the spotlight, I could see. Davy Sykes looked ready, too. You 2 bozos should be checking your list of doctor suspects, I wanted to tell them. This thing isn't over, it's just starting now. The real Casanova is cheering for you right now. Maybe he's watching from the crowd. I made my way up closer to Wicks Sachs. I needed to see everything here, just as it was, feel it, watch and listen to it, understand it somehow. Sachs's wife and the 2 beautiful children were being kept in the dining room off the vestibule. They looked hurt, very sad and confused. They knew something was wrong here, too. The Sachs family didn't look guilty. Chief Robbie Hatfield and Davy Sykes finally saw me. Sykes reminded me of the chief's favorite bird dog. He was pointing at me now. Dr. Cross, thank you for your help on all this. Chief Hatfield was magnanimous in his moment of triumph. I had forgotten that I was the one here who'd brought back the photo of Sachs from the gentleman's apartment in Los Angeles. Such great detective work. Such a convenient goddamn clue to discover. This was all wrong. It just felt wrong and it smelled wrong. This was a setup of the First Order and it was working perfectly. Casanova was escaping. He was getting away right now. He would never be caught. The Durham chief of police finally put out his hand. I took the chief's hand and squeezed it tight, held on to it. I think he was afraid I was going to walk out into the camera lights with him. Robbie Hatfield had seemed like a hands-off administrator up until now. He and his star detectives were about to parade Wick Sacks outside. It would be a big, dazzling moment under a full moon in the blazing Klieg lights. All that was missing were the baying bloodhounds. I know I helped find him, but Wick Sacks didn't do it, I told Hatfield straight to his face. You're arresting the wrong man. Let me tell you why. Give me 10 minutes right now. He smiled at me, and it seemed like a goddamn condescending smile. It was almost as if he were stoned in the moment. Chief Hatfield pulled away from me and walked outside. He walked out in front of the bright TV camera lights, playing his part beautifully. He was so taken with himself that he almost forgot about Sacks. Whoever called about the women's underwear is Casanova, I was thinking to myself. I was getting closer in my mind to who that might be. Casanova did this. Casanova is behind it, anyway. Dr. Wick Sacks passed by me as they led him outside. He was dressed in a white cotton shirt and black trousers. All of his fine clothes were drenched through with his sweat. I imagined he was swimming in his shoes, too, gold-buckled black loafers. His hands were cuffed behind his back. All of his arrogance was long gone. I didn't do anything, he said to me in the softest, choking voice. His eyes were pleading. He couldn't believe this either. Then he said the most pathetic thing of all. I don't hurt women. I love them. I was struck with a mad, absolutely dizzying thought on the Sacks porch. I felt as if I were in the middle of a somersault, and then I just stopped. Time stopped. This is Casanova, I suddenly understood. Wick Sacks was the original model used for Casanova, anyway. That was the monster's plan from the start. They had a fall guy for their perfect murders and the Desaad-like adventures. Dr. Wick Sacks was actually Casanova, but he wasn't one of the monsters. Casanova was a front, too. He knew nothing about the real collector. He was another victim. Chapter 101. I'm the gentleman caller, Will Rudolph announced with a polite, theatrical bow. He was wearing a dinner jacket, black tie, dress shirt. His hair was tied in a tight ponytail. He'd bought white roses for the special occasion. And you know who I am, ladies. You all look so very lovely. Casanova spoke at his side. He was a striking contrast to his partner. Tight black jeans, black cowboy boots, no shirt. His stomach washboard hard. He had on a black fright mask with thick, hand-painted median gray streaks. The killers introduced themselves as the women filed into the living room at the hideaway. They lined up in front of a long table. This was to be a special celebration, they had been informed earlier in the day. The mad dog Casanova has finally been caught, Casanova told them. It's all over the news. Turned out that he was some crazed college professor. Who can you trust these days? The women had been asked to wear serious party clothes, whatever they would choose for a special night out. Gowns with plunging necklines, high-heeled evening shoes with sheer stockings, and perhaps pearls or long earrings. No other jewelry. They were to look elegant. Only 7 pretty ladies here now, Rudolph noted, as he and Casanova watched the women enter the living room and form a receiving line. You're too picky, you know. The original Casanova was a voracious lover who wasn't choosy at all. You have to admit that the 7 are extraordinary, Casanova said to his friend. My collection is a masterpiece, the best in the world. I quite agree with you, said the gentleman. They look like paintings. Shall we begin? They had agreed to play an old favorite game, Lucky 7. At other times it had been Lucky 4, Lucky 11, Lucky 2. It was the gentleman's game, actually. This was his night, perhaps the final night at the house for the 2 of them. They calmly walked down the receiving line. They talked with Melissa Stanfield first. Melissa wore a red silk sheath.